Welcome, ladies, to the Real Estate InvestHER Show, providing inspiration, strategies, and insight to empower women investors to live balanced and financially free lives. Now, here are your co-hosts, Liz and Andressa.
So in today's episode, ladies, you're in for a real treat. We have Alicia Jarrett on our show. She lives in Australia and invests in the United States and actually has 5 businesses all in the United States. And she got her start with taking a course, and now she has really grown her investing from so many different niches. What we get into today that she's done really successfully in the United States is really transitioning from fix and flips to land investing. And that's a really interesting niche that a lot of people don't talk about enough, but she gives some great nuggets and some great food for thought that you can apply if that's something that is a niche that you want to jump into as well.
Yeah, I like that she breaks it down, because when we don't know much about land, it becomes this big deal, right? And then it becomes high risk. So I like that she breaks it down and she compares how she evaluates land the same way that she evaluates houses. Basically, she's in the business of resolving people's problems. And many times, as she mentioned, people don't even know they have those problems. So it's a great episode for you that if you are thinking about doing land development, this is the episode for you.
Welcome back, ladies. This is Liz.
And this is Andressa.
Welcome back to the Real Estate InvestHER Show, where we are committed to empowering women to live a financially free and balanced life. We do that week in and week out. And we are so excited to have Alicia Jarrett on our show today. Thank you so much for joining us. Excited to jump into your story, and we're going to get into land investing and some really cool strategies that you're going to share with us all. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Liz and Andressa. I'm absolutely so excited to be here. Funnily enough, I didn't say this to you both up front, but I've been on many, many podcasts over the last few years. And on my goals, it was actually on a Post-it note up here, was to get onto your podcast. And here I am.
So there you go.
Wrapping up 2022 with a bang.
I love that. Oh, that's great. So we always like to get connected to all of you listening. Thank you so much for being on this journey with us. And we'd like to share a very quick tip before we get into Alicia's story here in a moment. So I'm on the docket here, Andressa. I'm going to share a quick story. I want to bring everyone back to InvestHERCon 2022 for a moment, because during the conference, and that was our first, and we have our next one coming up in May 18 and 19. Very excited about that in Scottsdale. But we, during our kind of intro, Andressa and I introduced the women there to us. We also introduced them to our brain. And you're all like listening. You're like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? So really quick is that, the brain, and Andressa explains this beautifully, but I'm going to explain it in my Liz version, is that the brain is a voice. It's a voice inside you. And I think it's a way of being that doesn't always serve us. And it's sometimes like a knee jerk, kind of like our ego in a sense versus our essence. That's how I like to think of it. Because like Liz essence is like this abundant woman. My ego, which my name is Debbie, is my ego, is something that comes up sometimes. And so for me, I want to just share a really quick story, because we were in the car bringing my son to his birthday party. And my husband has this new opportunity on the hook, and it's a really enormous project. And, I'm asking him questions, and he's sharing some things with me. And I'm like, I asked questions, or I said something. And at the end of the discussion, because it was 30 minutes, we had a long time to talk about it, Matt goes, "Why is Debbie here?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Your brain has been super negative the entire car ride." I'm like, "What are you talking about? I've just been asking you questions." He's like, "No, you haven't." You're like, "I've been like, oh, this is going to be a really big raise." And then you're like, "Can your team handle that?" And I was like, "Wah, wah." Like every time I said something, you're like, that seems like, and I'm like, "My new team member, he's really great." I'm like, "But he hasn't had to deal with a raise yet." And he's like, "All I heard was wah, wah." Like every time I said something, it was very negative, and sometimes for me, Debbie Downer, it's like Debbie Downer from Saturday Night Live. But I'm not a negative person, but when I go to like, kind of like, I don't know, an ego way, or when I'm not coming from my essence, sometimes I get a little like wah wah. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that. And he was really playful about it versus being mean. I'm like, and my son's like, yeah, we're a little negative, Mom. So my 9-year-old reiterated that Debbie was around. So I kept myself in check and I said to him, thank you for letting me know that. I wasn't trying to do that. He's like, yeah, just, I want to hear your positivity and like, you can do this versus like, wah, wah, So why I'm sharing this is that, the key here is that to know what your brain, what that sometimes that negative voice comes up, and to share that with the people around you that you spend the most time with. Because Andressa will call me out. My husband calls me out. My son now is calling me out. And that's so helpful because I knew I felt a little negative, to be honest, but I didn't know why. And it really wasn't working for him. So I just say that, know these things about yourself, but also share them with the people closest to you.
Yeah. And I think he helps us to separate and not take it personally, right? So if Liz, my brain's name is Rhonda. So if Liz says, oh my gosh, Rhonda was really rough with that comment, or if I say, hey, Debbie needs to calm down, or Debbie needs to take a break and go to sleep, or that type of thing. I'm talking about Debbie. I'm not talking about Liz. So it's people don't take it personal. My son has a brain's name, and sometimes when his brain name is Carlos. I have no idea where he got that from, but that's okay. The brain chooses the name. So another day he was saying, Carlos, he's having like thoughts that he wants to play on the tablet a lot. I was like, well, tell Carlos that we're not playing on the freaking tablet all day long, that you have other things to do.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, but he's insisting. I was like, I get it.
I love his strategy, Andressa. That he's using that well.
He is using that well. And again, as Liz mentioned, May 18 and 19, Scottsdale, Arizona. We are having the entire resort for ourselves. Absolutely, Debbie and Rhonda are going to come. We cannot. They said, hell no, we're not staying home. And you're going to bring your brains, and we're going to talk about it a little bit more as new folks come along, because it has been being super helpful for us to really determine when that is playing and what it's not. And that's what we all stand for in our conference: real estate strategies, business, and self-care. And self-care is all about really self-development and really understand what we're up to. So if you have not secured your ticket and your spot at the pool, please do click the link below. We're going to have all the information there for you.
Yes. So Alicia, thank you so much again for being on our show. And we like to kick it off with this question. What lesson has taken you the longest to learn?
Oh, that's a big question. If I can first of all start off by just saying thank you so much for sharing that little story right there, because that resonates with me so much. And I often think back in my journey in business so far. And for those that can tell, yes, I'm an Aussie. So this is the Aussie accent to the table. I don't have a name for my brain yet. And I'm starting to think I'm going to get one, but I call mine the mini me. And that little mini me is like that little person on my shoulder that's going, yeah. They've got this voice, right? And I often find that the mini me comes out, and this is probably going to lead nicely into my lesson, when I'm in fear, when I'm in a place of being unsure of myself, when I'm in a place of, is that going to be really difficult or challenging? Now, here's the oxymoron here, right? I'm always up for a challenge, and I'm always up for taking things on and learning new things. But every now and then it tips outside the comfort zone or stretches that comfort zone maybe a little bit too far, even if it's things like financial stuff that you go, oh, that's stretching me a little bit too far. And the mini me kicks in. And now when I reflect on it, because I've gotten a really good place with my business partner as well, that we often will call each other out on, hey, I don't know if you realize, but you're kind of bringing the temperature down a little. And that's the language that we use, right? And I think you've got to find your right language around it. But probably the biggest lesson, and your question was the biggest thing that I've had to learn so far. Is that what it was?
The lesson that's taking the longest to learn.
Lesson that's taking the longest. Yeah, the lesson that's taking the longest for me is stretching my boundaries. Because just when I think I've reached that next goal or gotten to a certain stage or finished off a project or things like that, I want to sit back and have that little bit of, oh, okay, I can stop now and that feels good. And yet I'm working with a business partner who's like, no, we're not stopping. We're moving to the next thing. We're moving to the next thing. We're going bigger. We're going better. And sometimes that really takes me out of my comfort zone. And the lesson that I need to keep learning is that sitting still doesn't equal progress. Sure, you can sit still by the pool and have a cocktail every now and then when you're on vacation, but sitting still in your brain or sitting still in your strategy or sitting still in your growth doesn't actually enable you to get to what you really, really want. And I've got, again, just looking at my thing here, I've got some big goals on some Post-it notes here in front of me. If I was to stay in my comfort zone, I'm never going to reach them. So the consistent thing that I'm always having to learn and relearn is how to stretch myself and how to embrace the uncomfortableness of being an entrepreneur, of being a real estate investor, of doing some of the crazy stuff from the other side of the world, and keep pushing forward even when it feels challenging and feels hard. And I'll just stick on that word hard for a second, because I always say that hard is not a fact, it's a feeling. I'll say that again. Hard is not a fact, it's a feeling. What might be hard to you, Liz, is totally not hard to me because I've done it before. I've got the experience. I've got the lived experience around it, versus something that Andresa says to me is like, oh, that's really hard because I haven't done that before. So when we say, oh, that's really hard, it's often coming from a place of uncomfortableness, fear, overwhelm, etc. It's not that it's hard at all. We just haven't done it yet.
I want to mention something, right? Liz and I, when we started our podcast in 2018, we did a quick exercise and we were very intentional about the reason why we are doing a podcast. Because believe me, people, in and out, we are over 300 episodes and we didn't miss a bit. So the commitment is there. No, it doesn't matter what's happening. The podcast is going out the same date, same time. And one of the reasons why we started the podcast is that we want to inspire women, right? Give a chance to women share their story. But we also want to get inspired by other women that we are interviewing. And we're just getting started here, but I cannot go further without mentioning about Alicia's way of being. She's an Aussie, is Australia. It's 3 freaking a.m. And she's bringing her energy into this full of gratitude and really, Alicia, I just needed to say this because I come across people that don't have that grit, and that does not inspire me. So out of the bat here, I'm like, I am now excited about this episode because this woman woke up as if it is 11 a.m. for her. 11
Comfort
PM.
zones, right?
It's like,
comfort zones.
Absolutely. So I appreciate you taking the time and being here with us and sharing your knowledge. We really, I don't want to bag goals without me acknowledging you.
Andresa, thank you so much. It's my absolute pleasure. I'm here to serve, and I'm here to, as like you said, the reason why I do podcasts as well. I think you're about my 50th podcast so far this year. And the amount of networks and people and stories and sharing and collaboration. And I just have this inner belief that we do so much better when we link arms with others. And we can do that from anywhere in the world, right? So, and any time in the world.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Let's bring it, ladies. Let's go.
Let's do it. So you are in Australia, but all your investments are in the US.
Correct.
And I want you guys to, I know that you pivot from flipping to land, and that's something that we want to dig into it. But in a quick summary, how did you choose, first of all, the US? Why is the preference to invest in the US and not Australia? And how did your journey start?
Yeah, fantastic question. I could do an entire episode just on that, but I'll give you the high-level summary. There's now here's the thing. I was a real estate, and I still am a real estate investor here in Australia. I have a few rental properties, and I've bought and sold properties over the years here. But the cost of entry to the market in Australia is huge. And I'm talking, I live in Melbourne, Australia. That's down south. It's a city of 4.5 million people. It's a fabulous place if you haven't been. Come on over, ladies. But the average, I'm talking the average, not the upper end, but the average house here is just on $1 million. Vacant land is something that's non-existent. You have to go way out into the country almost to find vacant land and new development. The cost of doing business here is huge. Contractors, resources, things like that. It's almost like and I'm not kidding when I say this, it's like, 5-6 times the price of what we were paying in the US.
Wow.
The secondary thing is access to information and data and the way of doing business. So here in Australia, it's still very traditional to go through a real estate agent, have all your transactions handled by someone else. Doing off-market deals is not culturally a way of doing business over here. And the main reason for that is data, access to information. In Australia, the privacy laws for us to be able to find out what properties Liz owns, where she got her mortgage through, is she on time with her payments?
Yeah.
What's the condition of her property? Where did she buy it from? The tax information, any improvements that she's made, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The list could go on. You don't have access to any of that information over here. In the US, when we were doing our research and starting to look across the world at different markets and where we could start to build, the US just kept ticking the boxes on, wow, we can find out all of this information and we can market to them direct, and that's legal and it's accepted. So it was really just a case of how to do business and what we can do business in that kept leading us back to the US. And for anybody listening that complains about doing business in the US and thinks that it's difficult, I'm here to tell you that the polarity in other countries is vastly different. So the US just, it's an easy place to do business and find out information. And, our first property, our first ever house that we did, we paid, this is going back like 7 years when you could still get a pretty decent off market for a fix and flip. We paid like $17,000 for this little old rundown house in a pretty average area. We put about $20,000 into it and sold it for just under 100. And that was pretty easy. Contractors, resources, it was all very easy.
So
over here, you couldn't even buy a garage for that.
Wow. Can we break that down for a second? How did you do it? Did you have a team over here? How did you manage things from overseas?
we did. So even though I'm over here in Australia at the moment, we have spent a lot of time in the US building up our business, our networks, things like that. So when we first started, like anybody, we went and did a course on how to do real estate investing in the US, just so we could find out the basics. And I remember at that course, one of the things they said to us is, relationships is everything, which I wholeheartedly agree. So your task for this morning, this is like day 2 on the course, start to jump on your phone, find out some real estate agents, get on the phone and make some introductions, make yourself known. So we did. We were on the phone with well, when I say we were on the phone, obviously we were calling and it was an international number, so no one picked up. So we left a few messages. Within about the space of 10 minutes, though, one realtor in particular called us back. And our message, again, feel the fear and do it anyway, right? I had no idea what I was about to say to this person on the phone. I was day 2 in a course on how to do business in the US. And it was like, hi, my name's Alicia. I'm here with my business partner, Matt. We're thinking of doing some investments in the US and we're after an investor-friendly realtor. If that's you, give us a call back. No one called except for this one person, and his name's Michael Cassidy. I'm doing a shout out for him because he's an absolute gem and he's still on our team today.
Wow.
So he called me back and he's like, cool, you're from Australia. What's up? So we had a conversation and we said, look, we do have some money to invest. We want to do some houses. We're open to different ideas, but more than anything, we want to build a relationship with someone that can be our eyes and ears on the ground. He's like, I'm up for it. Let's do it. He's become not only a close personal friend, but he's pivotal to our business still 6 years later. So we actually flew over to the US. He's in Jacksonville, Florida. We hired him for a day and we just jumped in the car and I said, right, we've got you for a whole day. We paid him for it. And I said, drive us around, show us the lay of the land. We'd picked Jacksonville, Florida for some very specific reasons that the data was telling us that was a good city to go into, still is. And he drove us around to all these different areas and showed us, like, here's what you're going to get for your money here. Here's what the ARV is.
No, I just want to make a quick point about, you had just said that you paid him for his time. And so I think that's very interesting. And why I want to make a point of that is that so often as investors, we utilize, one, sometimes as women, we feel bad asking for that day with that person, but we also don't value it for them or say, hey, this is what I can do for you, because this is their time, and what have you. And so some people might say, why would you pay them when they're going to get paid on a commission? But they don't know you yet, and you are building a relationship. So I thought that was very astute of you to do that. And I also think that was like, you're building the relationship by right off the bat saying, listen, I value your time and I'm going to pay for it.
I value you 100%.
So I think that's just something we need to be mindful of. A lot of women will call a contractor, walk this property with me, or a friend or an inspector. This is people's time. And so folks that are getting paid on the back end, think about that. How can you get creative? And sometimes it takes
Love that.
He's going to take it. He probably took you guys very seriously. Wow, these people are paying me. No one else pays me.
Yeah,
sure.
Exactly. And he was very much like, no. And I was like, yes. Because here's the energy of that. Reciprocity. What goes around comes around. And when we can start to reciprocate and respect other people's time, energy, knowledge, etc. He'd been a realtor for 20 odd years. There's a lot of expertise, value, the amount of information that he gave us on that day, just driving us around, paying for fuel, all of that, giving us a lay of the land, set our business up for not only our strategy and what we were going to do from there, but also, the people and the places and the different things we were putting into traction. So you can't undervalue that. I completely agree. And on the flip side, Liz, I'll just say this, I've been on a lot of podcasts now. I've done some of the speaking circuit. I've got a really great network. Surprised at the amount of people that just want to use my time and not give anything back. Now, I will never say no, but I'm constantly surprised by the take attitude that a lot of people have versus the give attitude. And I think, what type of world would we be living in if just a small portion of us just had more of the give attitude than take? Because it's amazing that when we give, how much actually naturally comes back, right?
100%. Other day, we have a very large Facebook community, and it's all about give and take, and take. And one of the members that just came on board a couple of months ago started with this attitude of just taking it, right? Of self-service. And I was like, wait a minute. If I don't see that you are also contributing to other women, sharing resources and sharing your thoughts, your recommendations, you are just taking it. So that's not a good fit.
Yep.
And when you say, well, if you do this, then I'm going to get out. Feel free.
Yeah, exactly.
Feel free. We're not a good fit. Go find your tribe. That's totally fine. And I say this with kindness. That's fine. We are not a good fit. But I feel what you're saying, Alicia, because the more that we grow and we share, more people want to pick our brains, right? And I always say, if you say that to somebody, that is a trigger. So instead, ask the person. More interesting conversation would be, okay, what are you working on? So you can see how you can help them, because that person will be inclined to help you if you do that 100%. So I want to talk about the
reciprocity.
Exactly, right? And then why did you make the decision to switch or pivot or diversify from flipping to land?
The $1 million question. Don't get me wrong. I love flipping houses. It is so much fun because we did some of them remotely because Liz, to come back to your question earlier, after that first trip, we put a contractor team in place. We had a project manager. Michael was helping us out, so we could then do everything remotely, which was wonderful. But often we would fly back over for some of our deals and get involved in demo day and just have fun with it, right? But our last deal, we strayed from our strategy. So we had a very clear strategy on, this is what we want to spend on an existing property. This is what we want our after repair value to be. This is how much we're willing to put in. And we had our numbers and we had our strategy. One part of our strategy was also that we were very passionate. I mean, this is going back 7 years ago now, where banks were still not helping people out. You had lots of individuals that people had just walked away from houses, and we wanted to get the communities back into loving their homes again and getting people back into homes. So our main target was more lower end housing, but it was done with passion and with heart. The last property we did, we strayed from our strategy. We went for a property that cost us about $280,000 to buy. The ARV, the after repair value for it, was going to be estimated at about $450,000. And it was a beautiful home. That meant that it was going to be a bigger project. It was going to cost us a lot more. And that was also at the time when almost everybody wanted to do a fix and flip. I'm not going to blame Chip and Joanna Gaines here, but let's just give them a little bit of credit here, and all the others like them. Everyone was watching HGTV and wanted to get into fixing and flipping homes. And our last one, we strayed because we got a little bit of sparkle in our eyes. We saw this house and we're like, "Ooh, we would live in that one. That's great." And it was the deal that killed us. So this deal itself, I now look at this deal as a blessing, because here's why. We could have done that deal. It took us, we could have done that deal and kept going into other deals. But by the end of the deal, we were emotionally spent, financially exhausted, because we broke even after 12 months. And when I say 12 months, this should have been a 3-month turnaround. We had thefts on site, contractors leave, major problems being uncovered in the property. What should have been a pretty easy fix and flip turned into 12 months and nothing to show for it at the end of the day. That was challenging. When I say nothing, I mean, yeah, we broke even and I think we made a couple of $1,000s, but it was like, ouch, that hurt. So those things, a lot of people would look at those times and go, okay, well, keep going. We were like, time out. Let's just self-check. What's our strategy? Is this still what we want to do? Is it something else? Is this a lesson? Is this a beautiful lesson in here that tells us that maybe doing houses from the other side of the world is a little bit more stressful than what we thought? So we started to look at different asset classes, did some research and thought, what's another asset class that we could do that would still suit the goal that we had in business, but maybe wasn't as reliant on contractors or other people or resources and things like that. And we came across vacant land. Now, a lot of people listening might be going, vacant land? That's not very sexy. No, it's not. You drive past it. It's a blank piece of dirt. And most people don't even give it a second thought. But here we are 5 years in doing vacant land and have not looked back. As an asset class, it's easier to do. There's less competition in the off-market deals. Although I'll say that now, there's a lot of people getting into vacant land. There's a lot of different strategies you can do with it that a lot of people wouldn't think about, and we're loving it. I've now got a full-time customer service team of 3 people. They run my land business. So we've got 4 businesses in the US now, so we're really kind of taking over the world when it comes to our US Australia alliance. But the land business is going strong, and I think it was the best decision from a bad situation that we made.
Can we break down what that looks like? So let's just give one of your first land deals. So in essence, you're flipping land like you'd be flipping a property. Is that
Correct.
Fair to say? Okay.
Yep.
So it's still like a beginning, middle, and end type of project, right? It's not like a long-term hold. Okay. So walk us through the first kind of project that you did, how you found the land, how you evaluated the land. Because I think that's a big conversation, especially for even just doing new construction. People are looking at creative ways to do deals now. How do you evaluate the land? And if you're flipping it, how do you make sure you're adding the value, or not really adding any value, but just making a profit. So walk us through how
100%.
you jumped into a new niche, how you set yourself up for success. What are those key learnings early on?
Yep.
That'd be great.
Yep. Jumping into that niche, we made it very data driven. So data always tells a story. So we were doing a lot of research on things like, buyer and seller activity, the types of pieces of land that were being transacted in the areas that we wanted to do. Who was buying? Was it builders and developers? Was it, people that were just doing cash purchases? So really getting an understanding of the areas that we wanted to go into, and making sure that that area wasn't oversaturated. So you need to have kind of the right level of buyer and seller activity to then go in. Then when it comes to the deal itself, I'm going to be very surprising here. Not that much different to what you do when it's a house. You're looking at what's the current as is value of the land. And just like you would with a house when you're looking at rehabbing and you say, oh, okay, it needs a new bathroom, needs a new roof, needs new HVAC, etc. Same with a piece of vacant land. It needs clearing. It needs leveling. There's probates that need to be done. There's title issues or encroachment on the neighbor that we need to fix. So land still has its own set of problems that need to be cleared up or cleaned up, particularly if there's trash on the property or stuff like that, before you can then go and get your after repair value, just like you would with a house, right? It's just different things. So we look at the land on its as is, based upon its current zoning attributes, what can be done with it as it is at the moment. Then we look at, okay, well, if we were to fix these things or rezone it or look at the land through a different lens, what could we end up doing with it? Similarly to when you get off-market properties for houses, same principle with vacant land. We're going and approaching landowners. Typically, our landowners are people that have been sitting on the vacant land for 5 or 10 years or more, and it's got zero improvements on it. So they're just sitting on it. Nothing's happened. It might have changed title with a probate. So it's been passed down in intergenerational land in the family. Intergenerational land has its own set of problems in things like break-in chain of title over many years, etc. Maybe it's sitting in a trust and the trust has done nothing with it. A lot of the times it might have been bequeathed to a church. People that have vacant land and their family doesn't want it. So when they pass on, they leave it to a church. Church is like, great, now I've got to pay taxes on it. We're not going to build on it. So, there's lots of different people and groups out there that are owning vacant land that don't want it, have no use for it, or maybe they did have a use for it to build their dream home, but now due to divorce or death or something like that, plans have changed. So especially if it's vacant land that has problems, a lot of realtors won't want to deal with it. They won't list it if it's got problems, because if you get to the closing table and that title is not clear and they can't close, it's a waste of their time. So there is this middle ground, this middle group of people, of vacant landowners, that realtors won't help them. They don't want to deal with the problems themselves. So a land investor's job is to come in, get that land for as low as we can, right? Because we want to make money as well, let's be real. But get the land and take it off their hands for a fair price. A fair price being, I'll get rid of the problem for you if you give me the land at this price, and I will go and fix all of these issues. I'll work with the title attorney, the probate people, the title company. I'll negotiate with the neighbor on the easement. I'll do all of these things, and then the land's now mine. You just walk away. I'll take it on. I'll do all these things because there's a lot of cost and time involved in that. And then I'll find an end user for the property. Now, to come back to you said something earlier, Liz, about a lot of the time it is just flipping. It is, but we also do buy and hold. We do seller financing. We're doing what's called forced appreciation, where we're taking bigger properties and subdividing and doing that initial plat map and getting rid of those. So there's quite a few strategies that we do. Our biggest deal to date was a buy and hold, and that's the one that we made the most profit on. So, different strategies for different properties.
I have so many questions.
I know. We seriously could take it in like 15 directions, right?
I have so many questions because this is not just like you get the land, you don't do anything with it, and it pass along. So you're adding a lot of value through your experience and knowledge and resolving the problems. You're resolving a problem from the seller perspective, the land by itself, and also the end buyer that don't want to deal
Correct.
with that. A developer, come on, bring me shovel ready, and then I'll
Yeah.
go.
Who wants to buy
it.
a property that's got, the title's not clear and it's got liens on it? No buyer's going to go, yeah, I'll buy that.
So those are problems that can be resolvable, if that's a word, right? But talk to me about the red flags. Why would you say no to a land? What are the red flags they say, yeah, this here, it's a no for me? Or what are your criteria that will disqualify a land for you to purchase?
Yeah, really, really, really great question. Often there's not a huge amount of them. And here's why. I am not the end user of the land. So I am not my buyer. And I think a lot of people will look at a property and go, oh, I'd never use that, or I'd never live there, or I'd never build there. But it's not me. It's the end buyer that gets to choose that. So my first approach with my team is we always start from a place of yes. Yes, let's look at that property. Yes, let's look at that problem. Yes, 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 until we get the dead set no. Now, the no might come in two forms, and this is where the red flags come up. The first no might be an internal no for our team, where we've done a lot of the due diligence. And for example, in our due diligence, we'll go to the county and say, right, if somebody wants to build on this property, what's our setbacks? What's our restrictions? What can we do? What can't we do? And often when there's landlocked properties, a lot of counties will say it's not buildable unless you've got legal access. So then we'll go to the neighbors and the people adjoining the property and talk about easements and things like that. Now, the only time that we've never really been able to do a deal is when there's absolutely no way to get into that property, and due to the topography of the property, so the slope on it, the wetlands, things like that, there's absolutely no way that's going to be buildable. However, in those cases, we've often sold that land to people as recreational land. I've sold land that's been slopes that no one wants to build on, but I've sold it to someone who had enough money and a collection of mountain bikes that he just wanted to build his own personal mountain bike track. I've had wetlands that I thought no one would ever want to deal with, and I sold it to the neighbor of the property who wanted to increase their property size and take their airboat out on weekends on this acreage and have some fun. So again, we are not our end buyer. So sometimes it's about, there might be red flags that would tell me that that's impossible. But if I'm transparent with my market and I say, look, this property is not buildable, it has a slope, it's got these problems with it, but the title is clear, everything else is good, legally we can close. Just because it has those things on it doesn't mean that it's not going to be attractive to someone. So the final red flag is then the market telling me that they don't want it. And if that's the case, because oftentimes if the properties are really fantastic, we will buy them. If the properties are not fantastic, I will say to my seller, look, I'm going to take it under contract. I'm going to fix all these problems and do all of the due diligence for you, because they don't know where to start with a lot of this stuff. I'm then going to put it out to the market and see what the market tells us. And in that process, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, I'm going to keep in touch with you. Now, if the market tells us that they simply cannot see any possibility of using this land, then we may just need to cancel our contract and you keep it. I'll give you all the information we found out. I'll give you the survey. I'll give you everything. But sometimes it's not a deal. That's only happened, I can probably count on both hands. Like, we've done a lot of deals. I can probably count in total how many times that's happened. It's rare.
So that's really fascinating, in that your risk level is really low, in a sense. Like, literally, if you get to that, I mean, if you get, and often if you're buying a property, you wouldn't take that same approach, because you don't have an out, right? Your out is having to sell that property, and you need to know if there's enough buyers for that property, right? There's a market for that. So often in real estate, that's where you have to do so much upfront due diligence before you even go close. So what you're saying is very interesting, because it's really allows for multiple exits. And then at the end of the day, like you're saying, you really can't make it work. You can get out. Like, that's a nice hedge against, of the risk of what most investors are going through, right? We need to have our A, our B, our C conservatively underwrite. Like, you're going to go through that if you are the one that's closing, and there's no out, if you will.
Correct.
But what you're saying is, so I think that's very, very interesting, especially in today's economy.
You
know,
it is, right?
I
right?
wanted
And
to
yeah,
pick back. Sorry, Liz, go ahead.
yeah, go.
No, I wanted to pick back on what you're saying, today's economy, right? And the freaking supply chain. It's funny. How are you dealing with that portion, Alicia? I know you're not your end buyer, right? However,
Sometimes we are though. Sometimes we do buy and hold. So yep.
right. So for to build, the cost to build right now, have you guys had to pivot to do any different switch, considering the delays with the supply chain and price to build?
Yep, well, we have. So, and again, this is all about just having up-to-date conversations within your network. So we've got one property at the moment. We're paying just over $500,000 for this beautiful, beautiful, huge piece of acreage that is in Jacksonville, Florida. It's in an amazing estate that the family's held it for years. No one's ever done anything with it. We're looking to subdivide it and sell that to a developer. But we've had to go back and really negotiate hard with the seller, because the average house, so in the subdivision right next door where properties have been built, we're talking 1/4 acre lots minimum. So they're decent sized lots, more to 1/2 acre lots. We're talking double story, 5-bedroom, 5-bedroom, 3-bathroom houses. So, square footage on the higher end. We're talking, properties that are selling between 450 to 550, 500,000. So when we then, it's really us looking and going, okay, well, if we're going to develop that property, we know what the hold costs are. We know that 20% of that property itself needs to go to things like infrastructure, pathways, driveways, public spaces, etc. We know that the type of house that's going to sell in that area is at the upper end. So then when we went and ran the numbers on, the square foot to build, and we picked up the phone and spoke to some local developers and builders and said, how's this tracking at the moment? What does this look like? When we did all the numbers, we had to go back to the seller and say, we can't give you what you think your property is worth. So it's often a case of constant conversations, negotiations, and working with the facts. I will never go back to any of our sellers or our buyers and try and dazzle them with what ifs. It's like, no, let's deal with the facts. Building prices have changed, materials have changed, time has been pushed out. So if you still want to sell your property to me, we're going to have some negotiation elements in there, maybe some risk mitigation strategies, so that as we're progressing and as things come to light, we can have that conversation. Without that flexibility, sometimes you just can't do a deal. You will deal with sellers that are very like, I need to close in 30 days and it needs to be this. It's like, well, 12 months ago, that would have worked, because 12 months ago, we were in a very different market to what we are today. And so that whole process of, and I don't want to sound condescending here because this is not my intent, but often our role is to educate the sellers, because they think their property is worth X. They think that you could, you have them say, you can build on that in 2 months' time and it's going to cost you, $100 a square foot. No, it's not actually. So sometimes that whole process of the relationship we have with them is educating them on what today looks like.
So important, right? I mean, people, and Andres and I talk about this so often, and it's, especially now, people are living like 2 years ago, a year ago, and they have to come to like reality of today.
Yep, exactly.
Market.
There's a delay, I feel. There's a delay in their mentality.
There really is.
Or denial.
Really is. Correct.
Alicia, I love what you're saying though. As the investor, right? As that project manager, it is our responsibility to bring the facts out and negotiate. And not negotiate because we're trying to get a deal, but negotiate a win-win because it is a different market. And people can't just do deals now, kind of speculatively or not conservatively. It's just not working in today's. You're going to lose, and you're going to lose big time. And you can't overpay. I was talking to an investor the other day, and they said, "Oh, I'm going to get a great deal. It's 20% off where they were a year ago." I'm like, that doesn't mean it's still a good price. They're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, was it originally a good price? Because if it was overpriced then, it's still overpriced. because,
Yeah.
and that's how we have to think in this market. But I love
Correct.
that you are coming at it from like, not an annoyance, but I'm here to educate.
With
I think
facts.
that's with
Not
facts.
not assumptions, not my feelings, my thoughts, facts.
Yeah, with facts.
Facts.
I love that. And it's
Absolutely.
strong, it's clear, and it's the way you're going to get deals done today.
Yeah. And
So-
even down to, if I can just add two more things to it,
Yeah.
I'm constantly surprised how many property owners don't even know their own properties. So we go and they'll go, oh, it's vacant residential. You can do X, Y, and Z with it. And we'll go do the due diligence. And it'll be like, it's vacant residential, but only in the classifications of X, Y, and Z. And you can only build on it if these things are present and, blah, 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 blah. We get all the information and go back to them. And most of the time they're like, oh, I didn't know that. So it's really interesting how much our own audience doesn't know. Secondary to that, so, I mentioned that we've got 4 companies. One of them is a real estate marketing company. So for real estate investors. So I'd get to talk all day long with real estate investors, just like you ladies and just like me, who work across all types of asset classes. And I'm having to have the conversation with them about what your marketing was 12 months ago is now not working. So just like when we're dealing with sellers, the message 12 months ago is not working, we've got to change it. It's the same with how I'm going out to my customers now, because I'm saying, that letter, that blind offer, and that calculation that you sent 12 months ago, your response rate's coming down, and there's a reason for that. So we've got to look at that. We've constantly got to be saying, what's the market telling me, and what's the message that I need to match to that to have the right conversation at the right point in time. And it's so important. What your strategy was 6 months ago might not be your strategy today. So just going back to when we pivoted from houses to land, I think it's really important as entrepreneurs and investors to constantly be looking at our strategy and not just saying it's set in concrete for the year. It's like every month, review it. Where are you at? What's the market telling you? What do you need to pivot on? What do you need to adjust?
Absolutely. I see that all on the multifamily space, constantly calling other apartment buildings. What's the rent at? Where, rent increases, that matters, obviously, especially now in certain hot markets, rent has increased it in a way that's is just at an all-time high.
Yeah.
However, so backing into all that, constantly saying, what's the heartbeat? We were talking about that the other
Yeah, I
night
love that.
on
What's
a
the
mastermind.
heartbeat? Oh, I'm going to use that.
Yeah, take it, steal it. But it's so true. And yet that's what we need to be as investors astute with. That's really what we're bringing to the table, and people are like, well, how do I get that? Well, that's why you're an investor. That's what we're in this business to do. So if you can't figure it out, who are you looking to get that? And it doesn't have to be just you. It could be a team, be a partner, but that's where the money is. That's where you're going to make money.
Knowledge is power. Data is power.
Alicia, this has been great. I gotta have you on part 2. We're going to do some more digging. I think you gave us so much to think about, and the strategy, not just for land investing, but applies to so many different niches. So where can the ladies listening learn more about you and follow you along your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So they can go and check me out at Alicia at superchargedoffers.com is my email. Best one, I'll give you our marketing company, because that's where I tend to spend most of my time these days. Then superchargedoffers.com is the website. Also, if they want to check out our land business, they can go to sell.landscouts.com. That's our acquisition site for our land business. They can give my team a call. I'm more than happy to jump on a call with anyone at, I'm going to say any time of the night or day, perhaps not 3 a.m. again, but give my team a call, which is 888-538-5478. My team's got access to my calendar. More than happy to jump on to talk about strategy, marketing, land, anything that people want.
That's great. All this information, ladies, you can find on our show notes. Now we're going to transition to our fabulous 3 questions. The first one, Alicia, is what book about land development would you recommend? It could be a book, it could be a podcast. What resource about land development would you recommend?
Oh, what's really interesting in that question, Andres, is there's not a huge amount out there about land.
Maybe we should write one.
Yeah,
there you go.
I'm thinking there's a book on the horizon here, ladies. There's a few things out there, but Vacant land, vacant land, vacant land.
Or a
Can I
podcast or a
answer?
resource?
Yeah, okay, resources. There's loads of resources out there with vacant land. So with vacant land, don't feel like you have to do everything yourself. There's companies out there that will do comps for you, that will run analysis for you, that will do due diligence for you, things like that. Lots of different coaching groups out there as well. I'm going to say one is Ari Tipster. So there's a guy called Seth Williams who was one of the original guys in Vacant Land. He's got a fantastic YouTube channel called Ari Tipster, and he is so free. We talked about giving before. He gives and gives and gives with so much free information on how to do vacant land. So start there.
Awesome. Second question is, what is the most powerful routine that you do to live a financially free and balanced life, whatever balance means to you?
Routine. One thing is, we can get stuck so often in just work. And exercise is a huge part of it. So I've definitely got a routine around what time I get up in the morning. I get up at just after 5. I'm online by 5:30 and, servicing and helping my US customers, maximizing my time during the day. But I could end up working until 6 or 7 o'clock that night, because the reality is, as entrepreneurs, we can work some pretty long hours. So a must-have for me is a break in the middle of the day to either go for a walk and listen to a podcast, go to the gym, but get outside and get some fresh air. And I'm always amazed that the times that I miss that, I find by the time I get to 2 or 3 p.m., I'm a little like, a little bit deflated. But when I go out and get that fresh air and that walk or that exercise or head to the gym, I'm back and I'm ready to get started. So always making sure that you are part of your agenda for the day.
Awesome. Last question. Which women, famous or not, has inspired you the most?
Oh, actually going to say Brene Brown. I absolutely love Brene Brown. I've followed her for many years from her very first TED Talk. She inspires me the most because I think what I've learned a lot from her is to embrace all of me. Flaws and all, we all come as leaders. I am a leader. I've got quite a big team across all of our businesses, and I come to my leadership and my business as me, not as someone that I think I should be or someone that I think they think I should be. It's like authenticity, vulnerability, saying even to when I'm on the phone to customers, it's like, if I don't know the answer and I don't think I'm the expert in that, hey, I'll say that and I'll go find out. So following Brene Brown and a lot of her stuff about how we show up as women in business has been truly inspirational for me. I absolutely love her.
Love that. Love that. And she is on our short list. We will have her on our podcast some way or some fashion, right? We will not give up on that. She's one of our favorites. So, Alicia, thank you so much for being on our show. Thank you for sharing all your wisdom, your nuggets, and your way of being. So really appreciate you being here with us today.
Thank you so much, Liz and Andres. It's my absolute pleasure. I've got a big smile on my face and a cheek ache from just our conversation so far. So I can't wait to connect with you both, and to all the listeners out there, thank you for taking the time to listen.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time.
If you enjoyed this podcast and want to receive updates on our next interviews, go to our website, therealestateinvestor.com. There, you can subscribe to our show, become part of our investor community, and get updates on upcoming episodes.
If you like our show, please share it with other women who would benefit. And don't forget to leave us a rating on iTunes. We'd really appreciate it. And as always, we encourage you to take one action as a result of today's show and put it into motion so you can live both a financially free and balanced life. Thanks for spending time with us.
Ciao.